What's a glaring red flag you ignored in a relationship, only to realize later it was a way bigger deal than you thought? I have so many that I'm only starting to see now that my relationship has ended. When my ex and I were together only 6 or so months, we were talking on the phone while I was driving home from work. I couldn't even tell you what we were talking about, but somehow it devolved into him screaming at me that I'm an entitled millennial and don't know how to take care of myself because my parents give me everything. Meanwhile, I was living on my own, paying my bills, and my parents hadn't contributed to anything. It felt surreal at the time, and I tried to brush it off thinking maybe I'd misunderstood, but looking back, it was a huge red flag. Another big one was his obsession with the number of people I had slept with. I had more partners than he did, and he never let me forget it. He would constantly say things like, "You were such an oar in college, and you'll sleep with anyone." If I didn't want to do something in bed, he would throw it back in my face. "Well, you did it with everyone else." When I disclosed that I was S8 in college, he said, "Well, what did you expect to happen when you went to his apartment?" The cruelty of it didn't hit me fully until after we broke up. And now it makes my stomach turn to think about how he weaponized my past trauma against me. And then there was his constant insinuation, sometimes outright accusation, that I was a gold digger. I'm a nurse, and I met him while he was in his emergency medicine residency. Our salaries were about the same until he graduated and started making doctor money. Suddenly, he was convinced that I was with him for his income. He said everyone knew it, and that all our coworkers felt the same way. No matter how much I reassured him or explained my situation, he refused to drop it. Thinking about all of these things now, I can't believe how much I excused. I loved him very much, and I thought some of it was normal, or that I was somehow overreacting. But now, with distance, I can see it clearly. The constant shaming, the controlling behavior, the manipulation, they were never okay, and I deserved so much better. Next story. Her habitual abuse of my wallet. She'd come to me for little things at first, like rent being due and needing a 10 or 20 to make it through the week, some small cash for groceries or bus fare to school, or an appointment. This went from once a month to multiple times a week. She'd always tell some sob story until I gave in. Later found out she always had the money. In fact, she had plenty in the bank. She just didn't want to spend it because she was saving for a wild party vacation with her, as it turned out, not so gay male friend. Next story. When I first started dating my now ex-wife, I learned that her family had always scraped by financially. I didn't think anything of it and never looked down on them. A few months after we moved in together, I started noticing our budget was dangerously tight and groceries were running low. I figured it was easily fixed by adjusting our budget, but that didn't help. Later, she admitted to giving both money and food to her family. I didn't think it was a huge deal. I've always believed in helping family in times of need. Fast forward, we were expecting our first child and moved into a house. Her family was on the verge of homelessness, so I agreed they could move in. Her mom had stopped working. Her brother worked part-time at best, and we helped her dad get a good job. Days before our child was born, I got laid off. Her parents promised a family effort, combining resources, working multiple jobs, food benefits, and daycare handled by her mom. The first year went well. 6 months later, I found full-time work, and for a while, everything seemed fine. By year 2, the food and money started going toward essentials. Soda, cakes, junk food. I asked her to intervene. Things improved for a month, then reverted. Her family eventually moved out. Years later, things stabilized. Her job, our family, her family doing okay. Then her brother and dad both lost their jobs, and her mom returned to disability. Once again, her family moved in. The first year went okay. By now, we had 2 children, 6 mouths to feed. But wistfulness continued. Cash benefits went to random toys, fast food, and treats to feel normal. When I complained, she excused it as helping them feel like regular people. I lost my crap. The constant chaos, empty fridge, lost groceries, dirty dishes, destroyed my marriage. I spent years depressed, sitting in my car before walking into my own home, cleaning just so dinner could be made. By the time her family moved out for the second time, I was depressed and eventually diagnosed bipolar. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Next story. His drinking. When we first got together, I was 19, he was 23, and he would drink at least a pint of whiskey every night. I was still in my party phase and figured he just had a high tolerance. At first, it didn't seem like a big deal, but as our relationship progressed, the drinking got worse. He would have breakdowns that I had to help him through, often triggered by minor things, and several times he would black out and say or do horrible things. Feeling me up in public when I told him not to, threatening to shoot me, telling me he was glad I was upset when I would cry while trying to help him. Then the next morning, he wouldn't remember any of it. When I told him what had happened, he would just feel sorry for himself, so I still had to comfort him instead of being comforted. It was exhausting. I stopped bringing him out with my friends because I was so embarrassed by his behavior, which led to me spending my early 20s almost completely isolated. My friends started drifting away, and I felt trapped in a cycle of shame, fear, and responsibility that wasn't mine to carry. It took almost 2.5 years for him to finally stop drinking, but only after I found the courage to tell him I would leave if he wouldn't at least try to change his habits. Even then, I ended the relationship not long after, because I realized he only liked what I could do for him instead of who I really was. It was painful, but necessary, and looking back, I'm proud I finally put my own well-being first. Next story. He hung up on me in a rage while I was talking to him on the phone about him hurting my feelings. I asked him not to ever do that again because it was so rude. He responded by laughing and hanging up again. That began 4 years of him constantly ignoring any boundary I set. It took me a long time to realize I was dealing with emotional abuse, and when I finally figured it out, I got out. Wish I'd dumped him the first time he hung up on me. Next story. My ex is a red flag. If I had to narrow it down though, I'd go with the victim mentality. No one had ever given him a chance, and no negative consequences from his actions were ever earned. I should have realized that one day he'd be saying the same about me, even after I supported his worthless A for 6 months. I wonder how many people have tried to be his savior, only to have him leech off them and terrify them with his criminal inclinations. Next story. She was always angry about something. I loved being the person to hear her out and take her side, but soon enough, I became the person who made her angry. Next story. He enjoyed teasing me about my more left-leaning beliefs and feminism, which I could usually take in stride. It was all in good fun, or so I thought, but one instance went far beyond teasing. I brought up my love for Beauty and the Beast. He immediately questioned how I could support Disney movies as a feminist, given the way they portrayed women and romantic relationships. I laughed and told him that I turned out fine and was still allowed to enjoy the film. Instead of letting it drop, he angled himself on the bed and started putting his body weight on me. Then he began to hold me by my throat with his hands. Is that right? You turned out fine. Then why are you, a beautiful girl, letting me do this to you? I tried to laugh it off, both out of shock and because I couldn't breathe properly, but he wasn't having it. Admit that Disney messed you up and I'll let you go. I managed to get out a shaky okay, and he finally got off me. At the time, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he had just taken winning an argument too seriously. But the pattern didn't stop there. Later, when I was drunk and unconscious, he essayed me. It was a devastating and undeniable crossing of every boundary I had, and it made me realize that the so-called teasing and manipulation were part of a much darker, controlling, and abusive pattern. So, touche for him, I guess. Maybe it was Disney that messed me up, but only in the sick logic of an abuser. In reality, it wasn't a movie. It was him. Next story. We had a summer job painting and repairing dorm rooms. While we worked, one of us would start singing a song. If he picked the song, we sang it together. If I picked the song, he would sing a completely different one on top of mine until I switched to his. This was a perfect metaphor for our entire relationship. He always had to dominate to override my choices, and my voice didn't really matter. It wasn't loud or physical abuse, but it was constant, subtle, and eroding over time. Looking back, I see now that it was one of many small ways he trained me to prioritize him over myself. Edit. Thank you to everyone who shared your stories. I'm so glad mine could help. For those who asked, it took 6 years to realize the problem and finally do something about it. Abuse that erodes you slowly over the years is hard to spot and even harder to act on. Never feel ashamed if your journey takes time. I am now married to a wonderful partner who actually sings along with me. Ironically, our music tastes are almost completely opposite, and we can't stand most of each other's favorite songs. But here's a green flag. We talk about it, joke about it, and address the actual issues. We had a very carefully curated wedding playlist. We even made a game where we rated every song that comes on the radio, letting each other know when to change it. It's turned music into a fun way to communicate, discover new favorites, and share control. Something I never had before. Next story. He used to tell everyone he wanted to join the military, so he could off people. Edit. Most of you agree this is not a healthy mindset. Yes, I know people in the military sometimes must do it, but the red flag wasn't willingness. It was his desire to do it. I'm ashamed to admit this was mild for him, even early in our relationship. I won't reveal more here because I just look like a bigger fool for staying with him. Next story. He was very proud of how good he was at manipulating people and causing problems, including costing someone her job, justified because he only did it to people he deemed bad. The problem was, it was people he determined were deserving. Edit. Since so many asked, unless he was a big, hairy, gay dude, also into big, hairy, gay dudes, you knew a different manipulative jerk. He got the girl fired by antagonizing her in person repeatedly, claiming it was based on something a mutual acquaintance said. He then goaded her into losing her temper via text with both him and the acquaintance, which he brought to H. He cried crocodile tears and claimed he didn't know why she was cruel to coworkers. Next story. She had a best friend, who was a guy clearly in love with her. They'd known each other under a year, and she slept with him once before dating me. In a moment of weakness, she never let me meet him. He wouldn't acknowledge my existence or that she was in a relationship. Texted each other non-stop. I bent over backward to accommodate him and give her the benefit of the doubt. We broke up for other reasons after 4 months. The first person she slept with days after our breakup, you guessed it, the best friend. A few months later, she contacted me to try our relationship again. I guess the best friend thing didn't work. I said no. Next story. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a big deal now, but it has definitely made us reconsider our ways. I'm somewhat sloppy, typical bachelor habits. Leave socks in the living room, let dishes pile up for 2 or 3 days, maybe forget to take out the trash for a couple of days too. My wife never made a big deal out of it, and I thought it was awesome that she didn't nag like my mom used to. I felt like I had finally found a partner who could just relax and let me be me. Turns out the reason she didn't complain was that she's even messier than I am. So, for a while, our apartment looked like a pigsty. There were socks everywhere, dishes stacked high, laundry spilling over, and random crumbs in corners. It wasn't gross in a health-threatening way, but it wasn't exactly pleasant either. It became clear that living this way wasn't sustainable long-term, especially as we started talking about having a family. The happy ending is that once we decided to grow up, we made a chores list. We divide tasks and try to tackle them consistently. Momentum helps us. Once we start, we tend to keep going, but starting is always the hardest part. Edit. I'm glad I'm not the only one. What's really helping is an app. We use our home, but I'm sure there are others. There's a pre-made list of chores. We pick the ones we know we're bad at, set them on a timer 2 or 3 times a week, and gradually add more. It's amazing how a little notification can get us off the couch from Reddit or Netflix and actually do something. Next story. Her buying me tons of stuff and paying for things, including renting me a car when I didn't have one so I could drive to her place, was a huge red flag that she wanted to control me, but I liked all the free stuff, and she gave good blowies, so I went in even deeper with her. Turns out, yep, she wanted to control me. A few months in, she started talking about wanting to fix me. The obsessive behavior and the lies. My God, the lies. I'm pregnant, I have cancer, etc. Just got bigger and bigger. Next story. Started with him not liking one of my friends. Then it moved to hating all my friends. Then it moved to hating my brother and parents. Then it went even further and transformed into wanting to get me away from them as soon as he absolutely could. He even told me once or twice that he'd kidnap me if he had to. Edit. Thanks for the gold. I'm just glad I can hopefully spread this story and prevent others from getting in the same situation I was in. Also loving the number of stress, strain jokes coming in. Next story. She told me in passing that she accidentally burned half of her ex's kitchen while cooking. Didn't think anything of it until I came home to half of my wardrobe on fire in the backyard. Looking back, I probably should have seen that coming. Next story. After asking my then girlfriend to only use long distance on the phone at certain times due to the hellish rates at the time, this was before free long distance, she still ran up a $600 phone bill and got mad at me when I couldn't pay it. I didn't see how selfish it was then. I just thought she must really miss her family, since she did move to another state with me. I married her, and things honestly just got worse. But anyway. Next story. What I thought was low emotional intelligence and lack of introspection turned out to be a complete lack of empathy and full-fledged covert narcissism. Came to a head when I found out he'd been having explicit conversations online with women. He said it was no big deal, didn't have anything to apologize for because why would anyone get upset about that, and was utterly incapable of recognizing that what he thinks and feels may perhaps be different than what I think and feel. Next story. I guess I must have really taken to heart the moral of every fairy tale about how ultimately the best people are poor and humble. So when I was a teenager and very young adult, I just didn't care if a guy was between jobs or had no career goals or whatever. Guess what, ladies? That's how you wind up dating guys you end up supporting while they sit on the couch and make messes. They expect you to clean up. Next story. He hated his parents. This red flag is actually more of a gray flag based on a person's reasons for said hatred. In my case, my ex hated his parents for stifling him, even though he lived off them and relied on them to cater to his every whim. I thought it was so inspirational that he wasn't someone who could be controlled, but later it spiraled into him turning that anger toward me. It did not end well. Edit. Yes, I know. Some of you have valid reasons for not liking, hating, distancing yourself from your parents due to manipulation and abuse. This post is not about y'all. Next story. I wasn't the type she normally went for. She preferred tall, white, lanky guys with blonde, curly hair. I'm shortish, mixed blood brown, more stocky than lanky, with dark, wavy hair. Even while we were together for years, she continued to fawn over the kinds of guys she supposedly liked, the ones I clearly didn't resemble. Our hobbies barely overlapped. I supported her in her interests, but she seemed indifferent to mine. Turns out, she never really wanted me for me. I was a convenient escape from her family life. When I gave her that escape, by moving with her 200 miles away from them, she no longer needed me. The part of me she wanted, the role I filled, was gone. Slowly, she pulled away more and more, while I was left confused, wondering what I had done wrong. By this point, we had been together 7 years and were in the middle of planning a wedding. Then, I caught her cheating. Of course, it was with someone who fit her preferred type exactly. He was 8 years older, unemployed, with no degree or job training, and married. She knew he was married. He knew she was engaged. They knowingly betrayed both of us. She only confessed after I caught them together. 7 years of my life, my love, my trust, my plans, stolen in the cruelest way imaginable. I had given everything, and she discarded it without a second thought. The aftermath was brutal. I had to rebuild not just my life, but my sense of self-worth. Friends and family were supportive, but nothing could erase the betrayal. Every decision, every plan, every shared dream suddenly felt like a lie. I spent months trying to process the grief, anger, and disbelief. Therapy helped me put words to what I felt. Shame, hurt, and anger, all mixed with the realization that I deserved better. Over time, I learned to trust myself again and to recognize red flags I had ignored for years. Now I know that her actions reflected her own issues, not my value. I survived. I rebuilt. And while 7 years can never be returned, I carry lessons with me that no betrayal can erase. Self-respect, boundaries, and the knowledge that love should lift you, not diminish you. Next story. I went on holiday with my girlfriend, whom I'd been with for just over a year. It was only a 4-day holiday, but by the end, I very much just wanted to be alone. We ended up breaking up a few months later, then getting back together for another 6 months. If I'd had the balls, I would have just ended things then. I wasted a lot of time, mine and hers, just because I was too chicken to be alone again. I still feel very guilty about it, but at least I know now if it genuinely doesn't feel right, either talk about it or get out. That kind of thing doesn't just go away on its own. Next story. That she didn't clean up after herself. I didn't realize this would be a lifelong annoyance, but my wife literally won't clean. She is 100% content sitting on the couch watching her shows while I clean. She hasn't washed a dish since 2011. Next story. Unreliability, always had an excuse for everything, and never liked being held accountable. I tried being understanding and forgiving, thinking I was taking the high road. It increasingly frustrated me until I stopped believing her when she gave her word. It was downhill from there. Trust is a core pillar of any relationship, and if I could go back in time, I would simply tell myself to never compromise on that belief. Next story. My ex would get upset with me over any contact I had with other guys. Every conversation I had, I needed to tell him about so he could make sure I wasn't flirting. It was very cleverly done because he was subtle at first, definitely got scary worse after a while, and anything I pointed out he chalked up to PTSD and being cheated on in the past. Also, he frequently bragged about having no empathy. That in itself should have been my get out quick indicator, but I had low self-esteem and stuck around. Next story. I didn't notice at first that he never left my side when we were in social situations. Like literally, he would follow me everywhere I went. At a party, I went into a friend's room to talk with her and a couple of other girls about issues she was having with her partner, and he must have looked all over for me, found me, and then sat with us silently in the room while we were clearly having a serious private conversation. And it wasn't like he didn't know anyone at the party. Everyone there was part of our social circle. He was just insanely clingy. For some people, I guess that wouldn't be a red flag, but I need someone fairly independent who can hold their own in social situations. We were very young, so I didn't think much of it at first, but a few months before we broke up, it started to become unbearable. He would get sulky, jealous, and passive-aggressive whenever I told him I needed to spend time with my friends without him. Even casual outings made him anxious, and I began to feel like I couldn't have my own space without guilt or tension following me. After we broke up, I started dating the guy who would one day become my husband. The difference was striking. At the very first party we went to together, even though it was mostly my friends, he was outside with a group chatting and getting to know them, letting me have my space and showing confidence in social situations. He didn't hover, didn't get jealous, and didn't make me feel guilty for being myself. That contrast was so stark that it really highlighted just how unhealthy the previous relationship had been and why independence and mutual trust are such essential parts of a healthy partnership. Next story, how he treated his family. Sure, it was because they treated him horribly as a child. His dad abused him and his mom, but what I needed to realize was that it's completely valid to be scared of the cycle happening to you and calling it quits while you aren't too invested. He ended up abusing me hardcore, and I never made the connection until way after I got out of the relationship. There are some pretty hard truths to the phrase, if you want to know how he will treat you, look at how he treats his mother. Obviously, this doesn't cover exceptions, but it covers the vast majority. If they're outright rude to their mom or ignore them, ladies, that's a red flag. Walk away. Next story. We had different schedules as managers at the same restaurant, and I came home in the afternoon one day to an open laptop. It was open to an online dating site. I kinda laughed about it and figured there had to be a decent excuse for this because the idea was ridiculous. I thought we were super happy and was prepared to understand whatever she was about to tell me. I mentioned to her while she was on her break what I had seen and was met with a long pause. Not a great sign. After what seemed like an eternity, she tells me she received an email saying she had a match and that it upset her. She opened the website to delete her account and assured me I had nothing to worry about. I didn't think she was up to anything, suspicious silence aside. I just accepted it and moved on. About a month or so later, we're having a little get-together at our place. My girlfriend pulls out this awful affliction shirt and asks my friend if it's his. He spends a lot of time around there. Him and his girlfriend come by for board games, movies, and whatnot. He spends a bunch of time there himself hanging out with me. Not unreasonable in my opinion. My friend is adamant it's not his, and I think nothing of it. He brings up the idea to me that she's seeing other guys. She only has girlfriends as far as we know. I defended her, told him he was crazy. He got progressively more suspicious and upset with her, and it boiled over. He snapped at her in the middle of a game night, and I kicked him out. Turns out she was cheating on me. She broke up with me and moved in with a friend who she hangs out with all the time. Turns out she was seeing a friend of his that would come down on weekends. There were plenty of times she'd go out drinking on weekends with her girlfriends and meet this guy at his place and hang out with his buddy. His wardrobe happens to be full of these terrible shirts, similar to the first one found. I didn't find out until after. I tried to chase her for a while after, not knowing she was seeing anyone. I hung out with her at this place one time and the dude was there. The day before it all came out, I got along with the guy. Thought he was pretty cool. We liked a lot of the same stuff, same alcohol, same games, had a pretty good night talking with the guy. It felt so normal and innocent at the time, which made the betrayal hit even harder later. My iPhone 4 broke and she gave me hers as a replacement because she'd just gotten a new one. There was nothing on it, but the photos had a cloud folder available that had explicit photos of her. Liking what I see, I open it up only to get hit in the face with pictures of this guy's dong and them doing it. Cute little picture messages, heart faces, and all kinds of BS that dated back a long time depending on what was in accordance with stuff I recognized her sending me. She was banging this guy the whole time, before we broke up, but she was trying to keep me on the hook too, after the breakup. We kept hanging out and she kept telling me I was her best friend, and she didn't want to lose me. There were days we'd hang out and times we'd bang. There were times she'd tell me we'd get back together in the near future. It was so weird. My head was all kinds of messed up for a long time. Devastated. After this, she disappeared and went to live with this guy in another city. I found out through a mutual friend and was crushed. Looking back, I realize how many warning signs I ignored. I let my desire to believe in her outweigh the little pieces of evidence in front of me. I should have trusted my gut, talked openly, and questioned what didn't feel right. Instead of brushing it off, I wasted 2 years picking up the pieces and trying to understand how someone could play with my trust like that. It's a hard lesson, but one I'll never forget. If something sounds suspicious, discuss it. Don't just think you know better. It's okay to question things, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Next story. My wife had chest pains. She told me she'd always had them due to a heart condition she was born with. Always said it was nothing to worry about. Looking back, I should have worried more. She passed away in the middle of the night while sleeping. Her heart had stopped. It's been almost 3 years. I miss her. Next story, clinginess. Dude, got legitimately upset whenever I had to go to work or whenever I had a prior engagement with friends. I'm talking acting like you're actually trying to neglect me instead of taking care of actual needs levels of upset. Like, gets moody and passive aggressive because you won't be on the phone responding immediately all the time. It was exhausting. Every little thing that took me away from him became a source of tension, and I found myself constantly having to justify why I couldn't drop everything. It got to the point where I realized my own needs and time weren't being respected, and that's when I knew something wasn't right. Also, he proposed to me within a few months of us even knowing each other. It was overwhelming and, honestly, a bit scary given how quickly things escalated. I wasn't ready for that level of commitment, and looking back, it felt more like a reaction to his insecurities than a thoughtful decision. We're friends now, but with a healthy level of distance. We only talk once a month at most, and it's about inconsequential BS like memes, conventions, and new series we might be interested in. I'm dating my best friend, who I've been crushing on for many years, and he's moved on to other relationships as well. Whatever happens in those is none of my business anymore. Edit, I did not expect to see so many people relate. My heart goes out to y'all. It's strange how clinginess can feel loving at first, but once it crosses a line, it becomes suffocating. Distance has been the healthiest thing for both of us, and it's nice to interact without any of the past drama resurfacing. Next story. Biggest red flag? When we were newlyweds, he came home one day and informed me he had joined the military. We had talked about it the way people talk about maybe going skydiving someday. That's a decision you should make together if you're married. Instead, it was sprung on me, and it impacted my life quite a bit. I spent over 8 years of a 12-year marriage on my own, between his tours, trips to train, a geo bachelor billet, and then all the fun times he got to have with his military friends while I stayed home, because someone needed to watch the baby. I used to think it was generous and kind, how he would sacrifice things to help others, until I realized he always put everyone and everything before a relationship. For example, I've had to drive myself to the emergency room because he had already made social plans and it would be rude for us both to cancel. I always had to quit my jobs and hobbies because if I wanted to see him, it had to be around his jobs and hobbies. And his hobbies were always very expensive for the short time they held his interest. He couldn't try something new unless he was fully kitted out. Snowboarding was probably the most expensive and shortest. What really made me realize how crazy this relationship had become was when I was over the moon that he walked slowly enough for me to keep up on crutches because he had planned for us to go hiking. I went hiking on crutches with a sprained knee because I didn't want to watch him sulk if we couldn't do what he wanted to do. I ended up making my injury much worse because the crutches were too difficult to use on the muddy parts of the trail and going back downhill. I realized how pathetic I sounded as I gushed to my friends, whom he barely knows because they aren't as cool as his military buddies. It was so sweet, he slowed down so I could keep up. I mean, I have 8 weeks of physical therapy now, but he got me ice when we got back and let me take a nap. That's when it hit me. I had spent years putting his life, his hobbies, his friends, and his career above my own well-being. My needs were invisible, my pain minimized, and my time devalued. Yeah. That's when I realized it was way past time to GTFO. It wasn't about hiking or crutches. It was about a pattern of neglect, self-centeredness, and control that I could no longer ignore. Leaving felt terrifying, but it was the first step toward reclaiming my life. Next story is anger issues. It started out as just him holding grudges against past friends to getting worked up over football games, but then slowly turned into him hating my friends and family and eventually towards me. I'm honestly lucky I wised up and left when I did. I don't think it would have been much longer before he got physically abusive. Next story. He was a 31-year-old man and lived with his mom. Okay, maybe he had a reason. He didn't. He made a ton of money, but still slept on a bunk bed with his 35-year-old brother. Okay, weird. His mom did all the chores for all 3 siblings, 31-year-old male, 32-year-old female, and 35-year-old male, and cooked 3 different options for each main meal so they could choose what they wanted to eat. Huge red flag. I still can't believe I didn't run then. He would only eat with his special spoon, a metal baby spoon with a bear on the handle. Boom. I don't even remember why we broke up. I just remember this. Next story. He lied about the stupidest, smallest things. Like he'd say he was going to bed early. Then I'd find out from mutual friends he'd actually gone over to see them after we finished talking for the evening and played video games. Literally not something I'd ever have had a problem with. Turns out they were just the first strands of an ever-increasing web of lies, which, when we were long distance at different universities, included him having a relationship with someone else for around 6 months. Also, my dog hated him, so that really should have been enough of a sign. I now run everyone by the dog, and the first time he met my now fiancé, they became instant best friends. Next story. Him and I didn't have too many plans. Usually I would just go hang out with him for the day. It was normal. One day, he got a call from one of his boys to go play some basketball, which is fine, in my opinion. We didn't have much going on that day, and I wasn't really in a YOLO mood anyway. I was his only ride there, and back. I'm okay with this. I told him I would sunbathe and read a book while they played. He could have his boy time. He knows I love my books. I got totally engrossed with the story and the sun. It had only been an hour, and then he comes up to me and says, "I need to take him home." Okay, no problem. I noticed he was upset, but I thought it was something to do with his friends or maybe the game. I was surprised that he left so soon, but I didn't question it too much. Nope, seeing me on the grass, enjoying my own time in my book, made him jealous. Suddenly, the book was more important than him. I was completely confused. I mean, you can have your girl time and your boy time, but when both of them kind of collide, isn't there a way to handle it without getting jealous? It was one of those moments that made me realize just how insecure and controlling he could get over the tiniest things. And honestly, it was exhausting to constantly have to balance his feelings with my own simple, innocent enjoyment. Next story. He told me that growing up, his religious parents had taught him to turn the other cheek. As a result, he didn't stand up for himself when he should have. Looking back, there were some fights I regret walking away from. Now, I find myself looking for situations where I can make up for that, have the fights I should have had then, prove myself to the world. At the time, I thought that comment showed a lot of self-awareness, like he understood his motivation to pick fights. But because he was aware of it, he wouldn't let it get the best of him. I thought wrong. Next story. My then-girlfriend drank for every occasion. She held her liquor well, but there wasn't a day that went by that a drink or several weren't had. I drank socially, but we were in our early 20s, had disposable income, and I ignored it as just living it up. After we got married, she said she drank because of stress, then boredom, then after we moved across the country, for sadness from missing her friends and family. Nope, she's just an alcoholic. Next story. Every time I expressed a boundary, he made it his life's mission to completely steamroll it. He was so good at concealing what he was doing, too. It always came wrapped in this veneer of care or concern. He was just earnestly trying to push me out of my comfort zone, to keep me from stagnating. He wanted me to surprise myself with my own strength. And he was certain that any intimate boundaries I had were actually the result of childhood trauma, and that pushing past them would somehow benefit me. It was all about my healing. You see, there was always a very compelling reason why he could not be expected to tolerate me saying no to him or refusing something. Over time, it got so that I walked around with this awful, sick feeling in my stomach, a constant swirl of swallowed indignity and outrage. I found myself behaving as if I were completely indifferent to things that really mattered to me, just so I wouldn't attract his attention. If something really bothered me, I had to pretend I didn't notice it at all or act as if it was no big deal, just to have a chance that he might stop. If there was an intimate act I disliked, I would downplay it, pretending it was just mildly boring but that I'd give it a try if he wanted. And of course, that was always enough to make him immediately lose interest. But it didn't start that way at all. It started so small. He just wanted me to talk on the phone with him more than I wanted to. I have auditory processing issues, so phone calls can be difficult to follow at times. He pleaded, called over and over, and made me feel guilty for wanting a break. I found it annoying at first, but wrote it off as distance and loneliness. Looking back now, I realize that was a huge goddamn red flag. The very first sign that my boundaries wouldn't be respected, and that his version of love came with strings attached that eroded my autonomy. Next story. Never being happy with what he has and always thinking the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. I always thought it was little materialistic things, but when you become the subject of that, it pretty much will destroy any relationship. Next story. He hated when I wore low-cut shirts because that meant people saw some cleavage. He literally took me to the mall to buy me a belt because he was scared my pants would fall down and people might see something. He got pissed the first time he saw me wearing a skirt and tried to make me feel bad for choosing it because he didn't think I'd be careful enough to keep my legs closed and people might see up. I should have friggin' run way earlier than I did. Controlling behavior doesn't stop over time. It just gets worse. Next story. My ex-husband lied constantly and was so proud of himself for pulling it off. Late for work, took pictures off the internet of a fender bender and claimed it was him. Didn't want to hang out with a friend, comes up with some insane story about a sudden death in the family to get out of it. Last minute. Could not believe it when I just straight up told people I didn't want to do something instead of coming up with some story to cover. We were together for 10 years, and when he started lying to me, I noticed fairly fast, but I always thought I should have seen the warning signs. Next story. I didn't see this at first, but when I did, I didn't think it was that bad. Now we are engaged and have a place together. Anyway, he sometimes gets mad at things, which is human, but there's a pattern that really gets under my skin. He blames me every time for having an attitude when I try to calmly explain something about what I meant by a comment he took the wrong way. I'll explain calmly what I meant, and before I'm even finished, he jumps in to argue that's not what I meant. I'll say, that's not how you took it, but yes, it is what I meant. And then it just goes on, even if I ignore him for a while. There will be silence for a little bit, and then he brings it up again, trying to get me to admit I was wrong when I wasn't. When we argue back and forth like this, he'll suddenly say, "Why do you have an attitude?" and give me this questioning look, like I did something wrong when I didn't. Then it spirals into, "I don't understand why you always have an attitude about everything." It's so frustrating because it's a constant cycle of invalidation and guilt, where I feel like I can't explain myself without being accused of being difficult or defensive. It annoys me so much, and yet, I still love him. I know he has his flaws, and I try to focus on the good things about our relationship, but this dynamic makes me constantly second-guess myself. It's exhausting, but I keep hoping that with time and communication, we can break the cycle, or at least learn to respect each other's perspectives without turning every explanation into a battle.
Next story.
He would get mad if I hadn't seen his favorite movies. Not just like, "I can't believe you haven't seen movie," like genuinely upset, and he'd make me promise I'd watch it as if it were a condition of our being together. The same guy told me that I'd be exactly his type if I dyed my hair black. He told me that 3 months into already dating, I knew it wasn't optional to comply. Next story. When he surprised me with a trip to an amusement park and then got irate and refused to leave when I got blisters on my feet from wearing flip-flops. He drove, and we were in another state, so I had to follow him around on my aching blisters or risk being left there with no means of getting home. Stupidly, I ignored this and continued seeing him. I stopped seeing him because he didn't want me to use the bathroom in the middle of the night at his house because his roommates who I'd met previously and who knew I was there would see or hear me in the hallway after we had just banged. It enraged me so much, I got up and left and never spoke to him again. I guess it was the final straw. Next story. My ex slammed the door in the face of a delivery person because he was taking too long to double check the order. I was appalled, of course, but didn't think it was a big enough deal to break up with him. What I should have learned was that if he treats one person that way, he's liable to treat those closest to him that way as well. Next story. I had an expensive for me jacket related to a hobby of mine that they thought was dumb. One time in a parking lot when they were walking in somewhere and I was already inside, it dropped by the trunk, and instead of picking it up and carrying it in, they proceeded to kick it across the parking lot and inside along the ground. I confronted them about it and they gleefully took responsibility because it's a stupid hobby. Then there was the time that my friend got so fed up with me being too scared to go out for a weekend without the partner that they directly asked them if they would allow me to go out that weekend. I think their embarrassment at being caught made them say, "Okay, you can go out this weekend." The other big one was a group within this hobby that was quite vicious towards me behind my back. They were friends with people in this group, and the significant other was happy to tell me all the things said, and when I would ask them why even be with them, they never called them out on it. Next story. He bragged that he was going to be a great lawyer as he was good at manipulating people. He gaslit me for well over a year whilst cheating on me. Joke's on him, he flunked to law school in the end. Next story. He didn't really seem to enjoy being intimate. We were each other's first, so I didn't have much to compare to, but he never initiated in the few times we did do it over the years. I thought the problem might partially be me, and social conditioning basically dictated that it meant he wasn't attracted to me. That insecurity was hard to shake, but whenever I brought it up, he denied it. It left me feeling unsure and a little lonely, but I pushed those feelings aside for the sake of the relationship. I married him anyway, and we were together for 5 years before I finally admitted that I wasn't fulfilled. I asked him for an open marriage, which he reluctantly agreed to for my sake, but he made it clear he wasn't interested in it himself. Over time, through exposure to different communities, I learned a lot more about sexual orientation and identity, and by proxy, so did he. It was about a year into exploring this lifestyle that he finally admitted he thought he was asexual. That revelation explained so much about our intimate dynamic and made a lot of my earlier insecurities make sense. We're still happily married, but our relationship is platonic now. My boyfriend takes care of my needs, and honestly, that works for me. So apparently it's not a deal breaker, but it was definitely a big deal, and figuring it out took years of self-discovery, communication, and honesty. Next story. When I first met my now husband, I noticed he took a lot of bathroom breaks. Nearly 10 years of marriage, and I am so frigging sick of cleaning the toilet multiple times a week. I'm talking deep clean, not just a quick swish of the dunny brush, because he insists on dumping about 5 times every day. Who poops that much? Seriously. Next story. My ex was on his phone all the time when he was with me, but it took him days to respond to my texts, including the one where I told him I wanted to break up. Found out after he was messaging girls online the whole time we were together. It takes 30 seconds to respond to a text, even if it's to say, "I'm busy, we'll talk later." Huge red flag. Next story. She was really close to a guy friend of hers. Like, maybe too much, but since I was friends with both of them, and they both insisted it wasn't anything, I ignored it. I think you can guess where that went. Next story. In the beginning, he mentioned a couple of times that if he could make it happen, he would never work, live off benefits, and just chill and play games all his life. I just disagreed and moved on. Well, I should have listened, I think. Lazy, no ambition, no goals, no plan or desires to do anything ever. Next story. He accused me of being a lesbian if I spent time with female friends. He had no long-term friendships or people in his life to share news with, wanted to move every 2-3 years. He always hated every boss he had, as he knew more than anyone, never took constructive criticism well, etc. Narcissism. Next story. She wasn't interested in anything, like at all. She didn't have any stories to tell, nothing worth mentioning from her childhood, nothing. I stuck around for a year until I asked her to tell me something I didn't know. She screamed at me. I decided to break up with her on the spot. I wasted a whole year of my high school dating life with this girl. Don't know what the hell I was thinking at the time. Next story. We were almost home. He was driving, and when someone cut him off, he got aggressive and almost caused an accident. It was the first I'd seen of his explosive anger, and I didn't have enough experience to realize that it would only get worse. That relationship ended for other reasons. But remember, folks, if your SO can direct anger at someone else, they can direct it at you in the same way. Next story. He drank every night, and not much later, put whiskey in his coffee in the mornings. I'm 9 months sober from drinking to stop the shake's alcohol use now. I don't blame him, but we definitely fed off each other's drinking. Next story. He was a very late bloomer. At first, I didn't hold it against him. Some people don't come into their own or fix their issues until later in life. Nope. It turned out he had no idea what a relationship entailed, since he never made the teenage or early 20s dating mistakes or dated enough to figure out what love really is or what he wants in a relationship. I was dating a 50-year-old going on 14. Next story. He was invited to London by his friends for the day, but didn't feel like going. He was too cowardly to just say, "Sorry, I can't today, maybe next time." So he lied and said he was ill. He then said he wanted to take me to the local zoo. We go and somehow his friends find out. Rather than just say sorry for lying, he decided to lie bigger. He told his friends that he had taken me to get an abortion that day and that I was so upset he had to take me to the zoo to cheer me up. I have never been pregnant and never needed an abortion. I was 17 at the time. I didn't love him, but was with him because everyone said he was nice. I grew up with an abusive stepdad, so I thought I needed nice. Rather than the logical conclusion, "You are dumped, arsehole," I thought, gosh, poor thing, he is so worried about what his friends think that he feels he needs to tell elaborate lies. I was a damn fool. It wasn't until later I noticed countless other red flags. I managed to stop him sending the text and told him how inappropriate it was. He didn't send it while I was there, but I'm 99.9% sure he told them when I went home anyway. Ladies, if people tell you how nice a guy is, run the other way. Next story. She cheated on her boyfriend with me, then dumped him and started dating me. She said it was okay because they had only been dating about a week 2 years later, she cheats on me and ditches me a week later. Next story. The way he treated his parents. He would scream at them for things like parking in front of the garage so he couldn't put up the boat, or for canceling a fishing trip because they needed to move his grandmother into assisted living. If I had paid attention to the fact that he didn't treat his family with respect, I probably would have realized he would never treat me with respect either. Next story. His spending problems. As soon as he got money, it was gone. Even more money meant even more gone. By the end, I was paying for everything and didn't have the backbone to say no because I thought I was in love. Next story. How emotionally checked out she had become. After 5 years, I thought it was just a phase. She ended up ghosting me and is moving in with someone else. I found out yesterday that the last 2 years we spent together were convenient for her and she liked my company, but it's okay because she will always love me. Thanks. And that, boys and girls, is why you don't fall in love with someone from Gone Wild. Next story. He always had to be right, even when he was wrong, correcting me on absolutely everything to the letter and getting offended when I did the same. I thought it was just competitive spirit, but later realized it was toxic. Next story. She would change small details in stories to make herself look right. I didn't notice it until we had spent some time together and I was part of the stories. Turns out it was a severe behavior issue because she honestly seemed to believe her made-up versions of events. Most of our fights became me calmly asking, "What did I actually say? Tell me what I actually did." Every version in her mind made me the bad guy. I cared about her, but it became too much to handle. Next story. He lied. The first time I caught him, he cried and promised. The second time, still crying and begging. I was too stupid to realize all that crying and promising was part of the lie. If someone lies about something big and is really good at it, it's because they're just really good at lying, and it isn't going to stop. Next story. His father pulled me aside after we moved in together and told me flat out that everything I had heard so far had been a string of lies of varying degrees. I couldn't have had it spelled out any more clearly, but it took me 11 more years to realize I should have run then. I got a couple of great kids out of it, and a whole bunch of life lessons about the warning signs of an abusive relationship. Next story. I got a mysterious message from a stranger claiming my high school sweetheart had been messing around on me at a party. I blew it off, thinking someone was trying to break us up. After working my bum off to graduate early and move to another state to be with her, she admitted she had cheated on me back then and hid it from me. That was almost 5 years into our relationship. We didn't last long after that. Next story. She didn't drink water. It never bothered me much until one night she ended up seizing in my arms from dehydration. We were on an outdoors trip together, having a beautiful time. Annoyingly, I was constantly reminding her to drink water. By annoyingly, I mean I was the annoying one. So, midway through the week, I finally shut my mouth. I convinced myself her body was just built differently. While I needed several liters a day as we backpacked and keynoted through windy wilderness, she supposedly needed only a few drops every couple of hours. On the final night, as we brushed our teeth around the fire, she collapsed to the wet ground. She was in and out of consciousness all night. I thought it was probably dehydration, but couldn't be sure. She was completely unresponsive. Another friend and I canoed a mile in rainy darkness to another island where there was a satellite phone. The medics suggested we wait until morning, giving her water throughout the night. In our tent, I poured drops of water through her parched lips, even as she fought me off in her delirium. Fortunately, by sunrise, she was alert and responsive. It was an ordeal, requiring several friends to stay up most of the night. The next day, the group altered our routine so she didn't have to carry her pack, row, or carry her canoe. Basically, we all made sacrifices for her. And we're happy to do it? Well, we would have been happy to do it. Wouldn't you know, the next day she didn't take a single sip, unless I or another group member pleaded with her. I am a patient person, but that about did me in. Next story. His previous girlfriend sought me out to tell me he was still contacting her and that they had banged. I didn't think she was lying, but he convinced me she was a crazy ex who was trying to destroy us. I got engaged to him a year and a half later. I was so in love, blind to everything, and took him at his word when other shady stuff happened. 2 years after we got engaged, he met a girl while I was overseas for 3 months. When I got back, he never told me. I walked in on them sleeping together and threw his snowboard off the 3rd floor balcony onto the windshield of his car. Guess who became the crazy ex now? He trashed my hometown for a year, and it was the worst. To all the younger folks out there, when you feel something in your gut, believe yourself. If you even have to ask whether he's cheating, he's cheating. Next story. The hoarding. I didn't even know what hoarding was 20 years ago. I left a very toxic family, moved across the country, and was desperate for human companionship. I found something worse than what I was running from. The hoarding was just the start. Stockpiling, inability to throw anything away, not being able to move anything. The house was packed so full you couldn't open the front door. Luckily, I never moved in and never let our child stay there. Eventually, it all imploded. He had a mental breakdown, there was a stockpile of ammo and guns, and it ended with SWAT and a long prison term. Hoarding is a huge deal. Please, just take out the damn trash. You don't need 87 weeks of groceries. Next story. She told me she was in love with me while we were still just friends. Mind you, she had a boyfriend at the time. Long story short, her relationship eventually fell apart. We dated, and then she ran off with another man due to her tendency to fall in love with people easily. Next story. He had a 2-year-old when we first started dating, and his baby mama gave him a rough time and was quite difficult. He decided it was best for his child to no longer be in his life, and I justified it for years because she was awful to him. We got married and had a child of our own, and then when my son was 5 months old, he walked out on me. Didn't see it coming, but I should have. If he could walk away from his own child, what was stopping him from walking away from me? Next story. I briefly dated a guy who liked to tease. It went from gentle teasing to physical teasing. He tripped me several times when we were out to dinner with friends. When he chased me with gardening shears, I ran out the door and refused to ever speak to him again. Next story. He started dictating what I should wear. He had an insane problem with me walking barefoot at a dinner at my place with his mom, whom I had a good relationship with and had known for some time. It was midsummer and we ate dinner in the garden. Nothing formal, just a relaxing meal. Afterwards, when everyone had left, he really had a go at me. He got me interviews for jobs he wanted me to have. He had an issue with my training regime. According to him, I was not exercising enough, or correctly, I was recovering from a serious knee injury at that time. In hindsight, everything was about his image and how he wanted people to view us as a couple. I can't actually believe I put up with all his crap. Next story. Looking back, it's a tie between her extreme clinginess and her parents' abusive tendencies and hoarding. After we had been dating a couple of months, she basically wouldn't give me even a moment to myself. If I didn't respond to her texts or had a reason for not responding, I'd be accused of cheating, wanting to leave her, etc. Things became horrifically worse as the relationship continued. Her parents were two of the worst people I've ever met. Her father ran an illegal law practice from his basement that was literally rotting away after he'd been disbarred for, I believe, 6 or 7 Supreme Court violations. I'm legally blind and have cerebral palsy, so he'd tell my then-girlfriend that I'd never amount to anything whatsoever. I'm now a psychology professor, part-time now, but still, and working toward my clinical behavior analysis and teaching licenses. Her mother was a pediatrician and once told me after I thought I'd broken my foot, "It's only entertaining for me if someone is screaming in pain. Unless you start screaming, don't waste my time." As for the hoarding, their back deck collapsed under the weight of their accumulated trash. The front door couldn't be opened, so you had to exit through a window. The kitchen was buried under a mountain of boxes, brooms, and rotten food, and 95% of the bathroom was used as a garden. Next story. He cheated with me, then cheated on me with 6 other women, which I didn't find out about until after we broke up. I also learned that while we were on a camping trip, he had been with another girl right next to me while I was sleeping. To be fair, I was a very naive 18-year-old who hadn't had many good experiences with men yet. But man, looking back 7 years later, I want to kick myself for not seeing the red flags. There were plenty. Next story. Jealousy. I dated a woman for a few months in high school and thought, she's just a little insecure. It's kind of cute, but no. Even after I reassured her and made sure she knew I wanted her, she would blow up whenever I talked to, messed with, or complimented any of my female friends. In the first month we dated, my friend got on the bus wearing a blue dress. She was actually quite beautiful. I said, "Friend, wait a second." I looked her up and down and jokingly said, "You look awful today." She rolled her eyes, said some unsavory things, and walked away laughing. I never heard the end of it from my girlfriend. Every day, "How could you look at her like that? You obviously want her. You commented on how she looks. Do you not know why I'm upset?" I didn't, and that was just one of many cases I had with her. Next story. My ex-so of 4 years had no relationship with his family and harbored a lot of resentment toward them. This didn't bug me much in the beginning. It wasn't until the final year of our relationship that I realized he never made an effort with my family. Me and my family are really close. He continuously mocked my brothers and never came to any family events. I always had to go by myself, which raised a lot of questions from extended family. It wasn't what broke us up in the end, but it was definitely a factor. Next story. She didn't care about what excited me unless it seemed valuable to her. My interests, my hobbies, hell, my values didn't matter to her. Only ever what she wanted to hear. If I had troubles or problems and wanted to talk, it was put on the back burner until she was free or too much time had passed. She, however, always needed my ear no matter what. I was supposed to be a mind reader who could know what she wanted, no matter what. Even if I completed a task she asked of me, if I didn't do it perfectly or inconvenienced her in any way, I was the worst and deserved to be belittled. I didn't think it was an abusive relationship, but emotional abuse is very real. It's been 3 years and I'm still working through the last residual bits left over. Trying to start a new relationship has been very difficult, as I lose energy very fast. I've been trying my hardest not to superimpose these past experiences on future what-ifs with new people in my life, but it's difficult, to say the least. If you read this far, thank you, and have a great day. Next story. I'm probably over-identifying here, but my first thought when I read this question is, there are no insurance policies in relationships, meaning you can't insure a perfect relationship or marriage by watching out for a checklist of red flags. I totally thought the world worked this way when I got married. If I make sure I know him well enough, I can know that he will never do marriage-destroying things, and we will never get divorced. It's terrifying how naive I was. We aren't divorced. In fact, we're doing quite well. But there were big red flags I ignored that turned out to be nothing. And there were negligibly small pink flags that turned into major marriage issues. And yeah, I suppose I could have looked at those small warning signs and left, avoiding the problems that followed, but that wouldn't have guaranteed me a pain-free life. Either I would be dealing with someone else's problems, or I would be dealing with the problems of being single. Life is messy. There's no insurance policy to avoid serious pain. Now, I'm not saying you should ignore red flags. You won't be compatible with every person you start a relationship with, and red flags are there to tell you when to move on. And obviously, don't ignore signs of abuse. I'm just saying, you aren't going to find the perfect partner. You're going to find someone with a set of issues you can tolerate, and if you're lucky, you'll be able to adapt together as that set of issues changes. And you may end up breaking up with or divorcing a long-term partner, and that will be hard and messy. But it doesn't necessarily mean you were dumb to enter the relationship in the first place. It just means life can be painful, and there are no insurance policies. Next story. While not me personally, I figured I'd just put this here for anyone who may need it. If you're in a physically abusive relationship and your partner grabs you by the throat and goes aggressive, that's when you get out, no matter what, because that shows they're willing to off you. Obviously, leave as soon as possible if a relationship turns abusive, but that's when you need to get out. The signs are always there when you look back on failed relationships. I've finally learned to address things right away and go with my gut. It's strange, but the gut is a lot more realistic about relationships than the heart or the mind. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update.